to my lovely guest on Inspired Online today. I have with me the lovely Marcia Martin. Now, for those of you that have not heard of Marcia, she is one of those people that's been at the background of this and the foreground as well of the personal development industry. So you may be doing all sorts of things that you know and love and not knowing that Marcia was probably responsible for that in some way. So she started her career as a really young lady with EST, which is now evolved into Landmark Forum. So I know a lot of you out there have done that. And she works with some massive corporate entities. So recently she's been working with Hard Rock all over the world. I know you've worked with Evian. She's consulted with all sorts of amazing spiritual teachers like Jack Canfield. And I know a lot of you like Tony Robbins. So if you're wondering who was it that took Tony from California to national, well, this was the lady that helped him grow. So I'm so honoured to have you with me today. And obviously I know Marcia personally as well. She's just a ray of sunshine and really keen always to share her work and her wisdom, of which she has plenty. So I know that some of those techniques that you've been learning out there, well, this is the lady that they came from. So welcome to Inspired. I'm going to
Shay, thank you so much. It's an honor to be here, and I can throw back right at you so many accolades of who you are and what you do and the contribution you make. So it's my pleasure to be here with you and on this show.
Thank you so much. I'm going to start with the first question that we ask all our speakers at Inspired. And, you know, obviously we don't have the 10-minute speech format right now, but it's, if you had that piece of wisdom that you wanted to share with the world, what would that be?
Wow, that's a really profound and big question. I think that I would start with just reminding all of us that we are spiritual beings in a physical body who live in a physical world, and that we have connections to a higher power through our inner self, and we can access our personal power if we train ourselves to do that, and if we're disciplined, and if we practice, and that practice is really called upon right now for humanity, because we need to all be experiencing our connection. We're all connected, but sometimes we don't experience that. We think that wisdom in the background of knowing who we are and knowing that the answer is to go inside, not outside, which is perfect right now because here we all are inside. And I think that I would also share that there are specific laws of how communication works and what produces connection and what produces a feeling of being connected to another human being, and that if we learn some simple skill sets in terms of generous listening, in terms of how we create room for the other person to be able to listen, that they have the space to be able to receive, and that we are a transmitter of light, and that we can intentionally cause someone to feel better, to get sane, to be healthy, and that we need to keep our vibration up. Vibration is an important thing right now. Energetically, we need to be in a field of serenity, of beingness, of enthusiasm, of contentment, of gratitude. That space will allow lots of miracles to happen. And a lot of times when we look outside of ourselves and we consider what's happening, which is really crazy right now, we let that affect us, and then we pretend that we're the effect and we're a victim and we're not in charge of our mood or our attitude or our emotions, and we forget that we are, and then we let the event or the situation or the person kind of influence us in a way that we blame them for the mood that we're in. We say, oh, you made me angry, you made me upset, that made me sad. Yeah. When really what's going on, I would like to remind everybody, is things are happening all around us all the time. Those events take place. And we always, always, always have Sometimes it's very, very slight and a little bit of time that we have it, but there is a point where we can say we choose how to respond. And if we are responsible for creating our own mood, our own experience of happiness, and we bring that mood and that happiness to the situation, then we can start influencing events rather than the events influencing us. So in a nutshell, I guess I would say that. And one more thing I would add, that we're in a condition right now in humanity called uncertainty.
Yeah.
And that's a really uncomfortable condition for human beings to be in. We're used to being in emergency where things are danger, when you got to put out the fire, and even less time, but many times in normal, where things get better every day. But not many of us are used to being in a condition of uncertainty. And if you look on a scale or a graph, if you go 0, +1, +2, +3, that's kind of the conditions we're usually in life. And there are also -1, -2, -3. And if you looked at it that way, you would say uncertainty is a -1 condition. So it's a place that we don't normally reside in, and we don't know how to operate in. And there is a formula, a guide for what we should do when we're in a condition of uncertainty. And that formula can be a guide for all of us. And the formula is, when you're making a decision in uncertainty, when you're taking an action you're uncertain of, when you're inside of an uncertain kind of situation, then have the guide be, do or produce what produces the most amount of good for the most amount of people. Make your decisions based on, look at it and then say, how would I act in a way, what would I say in a way that would produce the most amount of good for the most amount of people? And that will eventually take us out of the condition of uncertainty and move us up in vibration.
Oh, there is so much content there already that we want to unpick at. I'm going to go with my personal curiosity question first. So this is kind of my lawyer mind working now. But based on the last thing that you said, what if that thing that's good for the many is not good for you? How would you make the decision then?
Well, as I said, it's a guide. And I think that consciousness operates in many stages. And there is a stage where we would say we experience that what needs to happen is for us. So the first stage of consciousness is where the world is acting on us. We're a victim. And we have a consciousness that I can't do anything about it. There's these circumstances. The weather did it to me. My bank account did it to me. My friend did it to me. The world is doing it to me. And that consciousness can expand. And usually it does when we have a breakdown or a crisis. That's the thing that usually brings people to the place where they discover their own inner power. So something breaks down so bad that it kind of breaks apart our whole way of viewing the world, and we discover a different part of ourselves. And that part of ourselves allows us to act into the world or on the world rather than the world acting on us. In other words, we begin to have a consciousness that expands to have a perspective that I can cause things. I'm not at the victimhood of things. However, when that first stage 2 happens, what we want to cause is things for us.
Yeah.
I want my car, I want my house, I want my whatever it is, more of things for me. Now it's interesting, that level of consciousness also expands because at some point you get enough, you do enough, you have enough, and you realize that all of that you thought you would have in order to be happy doesn't really allow you any kind of satisfaction or joy. There's something missing. And that's the question, where we say to ourselves, is this all there is? Is this what's more? And we start having that longing, and that longing brings us to a new level of consciousness, or the third stage of consciousness, which is where we discover there's a higher purpose, that we want to make a difference, that there is something more than us. And from there, if you do that enough in life and you have your purpose be about what can I do to make a difference, how can I contribute for the benefit of us all, Then also, many times, for many human beings at this time, there has been a transformation or expansion of consciousness to where that they realize they're doing it so often, so much that the universe takes notice. And then the universe says, let's use that one. And then a bigger thing happens where you start to realize you are somehow being used for a higher purpose. It's not just that you have a higher purpose, the higher purpose is actually using you. And you start to find that if you make a mistake or you go along the path that's not the path that the universe wants you on because it's using you, something will happen to guide you to the place that you should be. Now, the reason I bring all of that up, because it fits into the question that you have, which is, well, what if what I want to do isn't good for me, but it's the other thing is good for everybody? Well, you won't have that question, because the people you're talking to and the people I'm talking to are at least at stage 3, where we have a consciousness that we have a purpose, that we want to make a difference, that we're part of something bigger. So it doesn't occur to us. It's not in our consciousness of, what do I need? Me, me, me. We are a part of the collective. So when we say the most amount of good, we're already included in that. So it just doesn't come out that way.
Okay, so beautiful. And I wanted to pick up on this concept that you talked about of cause and effect, and how we cause those things in our life to happen. And it's a similar question in a way, but sometimes things happen in our life that we don't want to have happen, you know. So I'll give an example. Well, maybe it's not this example's just in my head, so I'm going to do it. Our Prime Minister this week contracted COVID-19, for example. So, you know, how has he created that? Because I'm sure that's not something that he would have wanted, or anyone out there would have wanted to create that in their psyche. So when you have that undesirable event, or the event that we're labeling undesirable, how have we created that?
Okay. All right. Before I answer the question, I'm going to have to contextualize something for you to understand.
Please.
So all things in life exist. So if you look at life as if there's something that doesn't work and something that does work, and it's an either or, you kind of have a perspective that doesn't really relate to how the universe is formed. So abundance exists, good things exist, but also scarcity exists, and things that are breaking down exists. What really is the question is, what occurs for you? What shows up for you? How do you see the world? Everything is in the world, and it can be seen from many vantage points. So the real question is, what is your vantage point? What is your perspective? Where are you viewing from, so that certain things show up for you and you can act with those things or collaborate with those things that you see and occur for you in the best and most productive way for yourself and all. Now, here's my perspective. Okay, so this is just a way to look at it. But I find if I look at it from this perspective, certain things seem to show up that allow me to act in certain ways and collaborate in certain ways with situations and people that allow the best result to happen. So my perspective is not that we create the thing that's coming. In other words, when you say, now, how did he create that? Why would he create that? I have a little bit different. I'm going to tweak it a little bit, because yes, it is an act of creation, but not in the form that you're speaking, which is, well, I didn't want that, so how did I create that? I must have done something to create that, like that. So my perspective is, you operate at a vibration. You are in control of the vibration you operate at. All things exist as a vibration. Vibrations, like vibrations, attract like vibrations. Now you're going to attract two kinds of things. You're going to attract things that you need as resources, as opportunities to fulfill your destiny, to live out your purpose, to contribute the thing that you need to contribute, to be on purpose, to why you're here, to be able to deliver on your mission. But you're also going to attract situations and experiences that you need to experience for lessons that you need in order to deliver and grow and expand to the person that you are meant to be in order to produce or deliver on the mission that you have.
Mm.
Now, the best thing I can say to everybody is keep your vibration up. So let's attract the best of what our resources are.
Yeah.
And also let's attract the lessons that we need so that if I welcome the experience rather than resist it. See, resistance creates persistence. And
Right.
most people live in a world of that shouldn't be. Well, I thought it was going to be. Well, it shouldn't be this way. All of that kind of thinking and speaking, whenever you say that or in a conversation and you're talking about why it shouldn't be the way that it is resistance. And since resistance creates persistence, the thing you're resisting and saying shouldn't be gets harder, bigger, stronger. It persists more.
Yeah.
So we need to move to a place where we're willing to allow or accept or receive or be with or experience what is actually so, rather than resisting what we think shouldn't be so.
Right.
And that takes some discipline. Now, if you can do that, then we call that welcoming the experience. And some things will be attracted to you according to your timeline, according to your vibration, according to the purpose, according to what you need to be for a model of others, or what you need to go through so you have compassion and understanding for others so that you can be a better teacher, or what you need to learn yourself so that you can complete old experiences and let go of the past and move on. There's all sorts of ways and reasons we have lessons. Now, if we welcome the experience, and I saw Boris Johnson, your prime minister, on a beautiful, he made an announcement and he shared how he had, and he made it simple and clear and clean, no drama. He just said, you know, I had this little kind of feeling not so well. I decided to take a test. The test came positive, so I'm self-isolating. Yeah. Now, that's a really good response.
Yeah, it was actually. It had a
you see?
amount of respect for him for that.
Yeah, and then to go into a conversation, why would he create that? How come he created that? Is unnecessary and it's unproductive. So what we do is we allow ourselves to be with what's so, knowing, at least this is my perspective, knowing that what is so and what's being attracted to us is either a lesson or a gift or an opportunity. And then what we need to say is, okay, this is what's so, now what's next? And if we keep ourselves in that mindset and that conversation with our self-talk and our talk to others and the conversations that we have, then what will happen is we'll keep our vibration up. And then we'll see later, what is the lesson?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe he needs to have that so that everybody says, well, we're all the same. Even he can get that. Maybe that's a lesson. I don't know. But I'm going to trust that it's supposed to be the way that it is. And then I'm going to allow whatever way it is. And then I'm going to say, okay, what's next? And be responsible during all of that time to know that I create my mood. I create my attitude. I'm in charge of what I decide I'm going to be afraid of or not. And I operate into the universe. The universe doesn't make me anything. I create inside of a universe that has events happening around me. That was a long answer, but I hope it answered your question.
That's a great answer. You know, and that's like a wonderful perspective that actually he did, well, I feel anyway, he did deal with that really admirably. And, you know, he's giving us an example of, look, you know, this virus doesn't discriminate. Those aren't the words he used, but, you know, to me it was, you know, when you hear about people like Prince Charles or Boris Johnson, they've got it as well. It's like, doesn't discriminate borders, doesn't, you know, we're all human at the end of the day. And, you know, here are some people in authority that are like, right, I've got it too, and I'm going to do exactly what I'm telling all of you to do, and I'm going to isolate myself in Downing Street or wherever Prince Charles is in one of his castles, you know. And
well, I'll give you another example personally that I have. So, you know, I went through a very horrific kind of sad and terrible time when I had my divorce.
Right.
And I had a stepchild who committed suicide during that time, who was 16.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of what I went through at the time, I of course had my training, and I know, and I meditate every day, and I
Mm.
look at things in terms of how can I use this as a gift or a lesson to me. But it doesn't take
Wow.
away the human emotions and the conversations that race in your mind and the blame that you give yourself and all of those things. Everybody goes through the same thing when they're going through
Mm.
life adventures and life traumas.
Yeah.
So I could have, I guess, said, why did I create this? I didn't. I
Mm.
got through it the best way that I could. I'm still great friends with my ex-husband.
Wow.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
And what's happened is my knowledge and my awareness of what other people experience in times of trauma, with divorces, with children leaving them unexpectedly in death, with hurt, with pain, with anger, with resentment, with betrayal, all of those things. I wouldn't be the coach that I am today had I not experienced that.
Yeah.
And I've trained over 350,000 people around this earth.
Yes.
And I have tens of thousands of people that I consider now my children. So, you know, you have to look at things, or at least I suggest that we do, in a way that there's some higher purpose. And
Yeah.
if you're going through something, it's because you're loved. It's because you're needed. It's because you have a great contribution to make, and that this little tweak needs to happen, or this little experience needs to be under your belt. And you need to know this information about how it all works. And the only way you can learn is to experience it. So that's kind of how I look at it, is I attracted a
Mm.
man that I fell in love with,
Yeah.
that had certain ways of being that led to me saying, I don't want to be married anymore to this man, right?
There's a
So
lot
I can say I
out there that
attracted
can relate
it.
to
Yeah.
that.
And that experience was really of benefit to me, and life learning, and gave me much courage as I got older, and much wisdom as I could contribute to others. So
Mm.
it's a gift.
Yeah, if only all my family law clients saw it that way.
Well, that's another thing, isn't it? We
It is.
can't really decide other people's choices,
That's true.
and we don't even know really what's good for them.
Mm.
Because if we say to ourselves, they shouldn't that, or they should this, or if they only knew that, or if they would do it this way, what we're really saying is their path isn't right for them.
Mm.
But how can that be so?
We don't know.
If we think, you know, if we look at ourselves and say, what is my choice? What is my decision? What do I need? How can I be the best person in response to this? It
Mm.
probably would do better than trying to tell everybody how they should live, you know, or what they are doing that's wrong. So, yeah, we all have a lot of people around us that we consider we know a lot more than they do, and they should be going down this way instead of that way. But who really knows, right? We can only change ourselves.
Yeah. I wanted to actually go back, and it fits in quite nicely what you last said about at the beginning when you were sharing your, summary of wisdom, if you like. You were talking about that concept of generous listening,
Mm.
and how can you do that especially when someone is sharing something that's difficult, when you're thinking, do you know what, I would have done this differently, or I know best, or whatever it is. Can you just say more to that?
Yeah, I will. And I would like to say that there are a couple of ingredients in communication that we don't learn when we're young. We learn how to add numbers, we learn where geography is, and we learn, how to paint, but nobody teaches us how to relate and communicate and connect. So presence is the first law. You have to be present in order to be in a communication with another human being, and they have to be present. So the first thing, even before generous listening, is get yourself here and do what you need to do to get the other person here. We're always off in our head. We're thinking something. We're daydreaming. We're working on our computer when our kids are trying to talk to us. Like, have it be worthwhile rule for yourself to know that I need to get present. I need to get grounded. I need to get centered, present, open, and connected in my body, present, and open.
Yes.
Okay. Second one is space, to understand about space. So there's space and there's things in space. And when you're a human being, you have space, internal space, and you deal with external space. So there are things in the space between you and another human being externally, but there are also things in the space that you have internally and things in their space they have internally.
Yeah.
And space is only as big as it is, so it can only hold so many things. And if your internal space is filled up, you can't receive. And if you can't receive, you can't be a generous listener. Now, also the other person, if they're filled up, they can't hear anything you're saying because they're already filled up. So if you really want to make some kind of influence or difference with that other person, you have to be able to not only create space within you so that you can receive them, but you also have to be able to create space in them. And one of the best ways to create space is to generously listen, which most people don't do. And what generous listening is where you're really open to what they're saying as if they're brilliant. Yeah. Notice how if you think a person's brilliant, you listen totally attentively and you're listening to what they're saying rather than what you're saying, right? Yeah. In your head. So if you just get that perspective, wow, I'm going to listen as if this person's brilliant, and also as if what they're saying is actually possible. Like that's a whole different kind of listening. And so you probably won't interrupt. You probably will be present. You'll probably be listening to what they're saying rather than what you want them to say. And you won't have that influence or that wanting to stop in the middle and tell them your defense or tell them why they're wrong. Now, it's a dance, Shay. So you can't just be a generous listener and then you just sit there generously listening and they get the whole, be on the soapbox. It has to go back and forth like the tango. So it's your being willing to see, oh, they have some space. Now I can put something in. Oh, they don't have any space. I'm going to take something out. And doing that in present time in an open way where you're connected. Now, all of that is kind of like my giving you a 5-minute lesson on how to play the piano.
I know.
And you don't learn in 5 minutes, right? So you have to practice. So one of the things about generous listening, how you can practice is be a generous listener just for a minute. Just for a minute, say, I'm going to listen as if this person is actually brilliant and as if what they're saying is possible. And then you experience, oh, you heard something you wouldn't have heard before because you were so judgmental in your old listening, and now you're open. And it's just different, okay? And if you practice that a little bit, and then practice being present. And how you practice being present is notice when you're not present. Oh, I just went off. Oh, I just thought this. Oh, I just wanted to say that, and it's just so get myself back. And a good exercise for learning how to do that is to meditate. People do not understand, the value of meditation because it is an exercise where you quiet yourself and you be still and you take yourself to a different brainwave. You go to theta instead of alpha. And all sorts of things happen, including expanding your attention span and your ability to be present. So after you meditate, having meditated a few times, being still for 5 minutes a day and just visualizing some beautiful scene, it takes you to that place where in that place things happen. And then when you come out from your meditation, you go out in life and you notice, wow, I'm more interested than I was before. I have a longer attention span. I can be present more often. So a little bit at a time along the way.
No, that's wonderful. My next question was actually going to be, how do you empty your own space? But I think you answered that beautifully.
Meditation.
I was going to give the example, there's a silly example from yesterday. My mum seemed very distracted and she a little bit upset and all that kind of thing. And I was thinking, okay, I don't know what's up with her. And what I found out later, what had actually happened was she deleted accidentally all the messages from her WhatsApp, and she likes to keep those because she thought,
Oh.
you know, and then so her space, and you know, you might have an example of your own, was filled by, how do I get my messages back? My Apple is closed. You know?
Well, you know, you've been with me when I've been in a situation where I had my space filled up. We were at a meeting together and I was trying to get a communication across, and what was going on with me that no one even knew about
Yeah.
was that the general manager and the staff of the hotel we were in were waiting in the hallway to set up our room for a new event the next day. And we were an hour and a half late.
Right.
Now, if I just said that to someone, I could have emptied my space and they would have had more space to listen.
Yeah.
But instead, like all human beings, we get triggered, we get, you know, kind of caught. And I went into my modus operandi of Marcia Martin when she's threatened, which is push, control, shut everybody out, get it done. And, you know, it was a mess. So the thing that we can all use is this thing called awareness. Awareness is the foundation of all peak performance and all championship performance. Your body is set up and your mind is set up to naturally learn if you can be aware of something. So in those situations, if we say to ourselves, wow, what was I thinking? What was I feeling? What was I saying? And we actually are aware of it, and we're not in the action, but we're looking at the action and we're going, oh, I see, that triggered me. And then I thought this.
Yeah.
Oh, that's an old pattern. Yeah, I've been there before. Oh, then I did this. Oh, yeah, I've been there before too. That didn't work. Okay, but the more awareness I put on it and then I let it go, then the more skilled I am for the next time I get triggered. So in all of it all, if we just be present, are aware, consider that the person might be brilliant and it's possible, and allow whatever's there to be there instead of resisting it. At least that gives us a couple of ABCs, you know. From there we can write a novel.
You know what, the time has just flown by. I know we're almost at time actually, but I did want to ask you this before we start wrapping up, and that is also in your beginning summary, you mentioned about connecting to your higher power and your highest source. And again, I was just wondering if you'd say a few words about how people can do that for themselves, especially at this time.
The real answer to that is go inside, not outside. And what happens, Shay, is when people go inside, if you reflect or you sit down and you kind of, your mind usually is racing if you haven't practiced meditation for a while. Your body is itching, you know, it starts doing all of its stuff and your nose starts to run and, you know, who knows what you do. You just have to get up, you have to move, so you have to get through that piece. But going inside, once you do that for a particular amount of time, what will happen is you'll get in touch with a part of you that knows the answers, and it will grow your intuition, and it will grow your sight, and it will grow your listening. And in that space, it's like when I ever have a question, I always look within. I don't look without. It's a natural thing that I've been trained to do since I was 17. My aunt was a shaman, and she trained me from the time I was 17 till I was 20 about how energy works and how to meditate. So I'm a fortunate human being. I started when I was young. I will say that I have lots of this information on my website and my club. I have this new club, Marcia Martin Club. And if you go to marciamartin.com or marciamartinclub.com, and it's Marcia, we all know how we spell my name. I've got kind of now a Netflix Marcia Martin. Nice. And I'm starting to put up, yeah, it's really cool. And it's really well done. I'm thrilled with my team. We've made it all over this past year. And I'm putting up my workshops, my speaking engagements, my podcasts, my interviews over the last 30 years. So we're continuing to add programs. And they're all broken down and edited and in modules, and they're all described. So just like when you go to Netflix, you can pick a movie. Well, you can go to marciamartinclub.com and pick a workshop. And then you can sit in the pleasure of your own home and decide if you want to watch an hour of it, or a half hour, or 20 minutes, or just the part on communication, or the part on leadership, or the part on good intimacy and sex. There's all sorts of choices.
It's a fun one for right now, perhaps.
Yeah, really. And everybody has a lot of time right now. So what I found is my gift has been to speak in a way that passes wisdom on. And it's been my work since I'm 17. So I haven't done anything else. This is my work, to develop human beings to be more effective in their lives and to have them grow and to create more consciousness. And so this is my way of being able to do that for people in a really cheap way. It's $10 a month. So it's kind of a cool thing.
When do you have any final thoughts or final words of wisdom that you'd like to share with us today?
Yes, my final words were keep yourself in gratitude and keep others in gratitude. So when the conversations are going in a way of, oh, I'm scared, oh, I'm afraid, oh, this isn't working, oh, I can't do this, whatever, just know you have the ability to manage the conversation. You can notice what conversation you're in and then guide the conversation to a different conversation. And a conversation of gratitude is a really healthy, magical thing. So you say to yourself, what am I grateful for? Or you say to someone else, oh, thank you for sharing that. I really understand how you feel. What are you grateful for today? You just change the conversation and get them in the conversation of focusing on what's working, what they're thankful for, what they appreciate, who they want to acknowledge, what they're grateful for, and do the same with yourself. And that will take care of everything.
Wonderful. Well, Marcia, to those of you watching on Facebook, I'm sorry that I can't cross to Facebook to see what you've been commenting, but we'll figure that out in the next few days about how to do that. But if you have any questions or comments from Marcia, then and you're watching this back, then please leave them and we'll try and get to them for you. Otherwise, Marcia said you can contact her on marciamartin.com. Please check out the Marcia Martin Club, and she's super approachable and lovely, so you know, do check those out. And thank you so much for your time today. That was amazing, content packed, and I know will give a lot of value to a lot of people. So please stay safe and take care of yourself. Lots of love.
Shay, I so love and adore you. Thank you so much. I'm very grateful for you and your program and your listeners. Bye.